welcome those of you watching from all over the world. Persons watching from Denmark, UK, Germany, Ukraine, St. Lucia, Jamaica. The data had showed us that. Yes, you are watching those reaching out from Apple Podcast. Welcome. And I'll be sitting in with a very important guest this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you're watching from, whenever you're watching. It dictates the time. As I've said, this is a world with so many time zones. My guest actually said that I suspect, an hour ahead of her. I will find out where she's reaching out from shortly. But my guest had gone through a lot, and she will be talking to me about from prison to purpose. And she had experienced so many things in her life. She has overcome trauma, addiction, domestic violence, traumatic brain injury, and abusive and corrupt institutions, as well as mental health crisis. She will tell us more about that as I let my guest in. I will ask her about her childhood, yes, and I will ask her about a number of other things before I get into the meat of the matter. Let Elizabeth in. Elizabeth, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Tell me firstly, how do you pronounce your last name?
Mikotowicz. When I got your message, I panicked. I thought it was at 5 o'clock's an hour from now. And I'm like, oh my God, I thought I had an hour to get ready. And here we go.
So that begs the question. Where are you reaching out from?
Texas.
Oh, and I'm in New York. Right.
Yeah. Well, I was in Maine. We just moved down here a little while ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. It's nice to have you though. And firstly, I'd like to ask you, who is Elizabeth? Let us know, who are you professionally and personally?
I'm an artist, a writer, an entrepreneur, and an activist. But 5 years ago, I was painting murals as a federal inmate at Danbury. I caught, some drug charges trying to flee a domestic violence situation. And I've just been trying to get my life back.
Yeah, no, and you will get it back if it has not been already back. What I'm seeing now, it showed me that you're getting there and you'll be okay. But tell me about your childhood first, Elizabeth, before we go into some of things.
Yeah, I was adopted from birth, and I had really good parents, and we had a big house like out in the country, and I was never exposed to violence or drugs or abuse. They had a messy divorce, but they loved me and supported me, my whole life. But it wasn't until my late teens, early 20s, I got into a really abusive relationship. And when he assaulted me, I was in the hospital, with my skull showing. Yeah. And I started getting seizures, from the brain damage. And they prescribed me opioids. And at first I took them. They said I was on too small of a dose to get addicted. And now we know, almost 20 years later that, that was just big pharma trying to make money off of, the suffering of the American people. Like we make up 5% of the world and we're doing like 70% of the drugs. Like this is insane. But when they sent me to the pain clinic, because I found out I was pregnant with my son that day too. So now I was like having this man's baby, and they tried to give me a steady prescription of opioids, and at first I was like, I don't want to take this, like this is addictive, I'm pregnant, like I've watched my entire community go down the drain because of these pharmaceutical opioids that are being prescribed to everybody. I don't want to do that. They threatened me with child protective services if I didn't take it, saying that I was refusing medical advice. So obviously I took it, and after being on it for a couple of years, I got addicted. And it's not the doctor's fault I got addicted, but it's their fault. They coerced me into making me feel like I was going to lose my kids to the state if I didn't do what they said. And so the abuse got worse. He'd trap me in the bathroom and literally like torture me for hours. I eventually went to Spruce Run, the battered women's shelter, and they turned me away with 2 beds open. at first they called me a liar. They said because I wasn't crying that they didn't believe me. And then I brought the police records. I brought, they talked to the cops that brought me to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my hospital records, and they did a complete 180 and said, well, your injuries are too extensive and it puts the other women in the shelter in danger.
Yeah,
So
but
we're not going to help you. Yeah.
That speaks to corruption, institutional corruption,
Yes.
as you have
And
alluded to. So,
this is a really big problem in America with victim-based shelters. A friend of mine, when I was in jail, she was a victim of sex trafficking.
mhm,
And she was trying to get into the human trafficking shelter. They wouldn't take her unless if she snitched on her pimp. So
okay.
you want a victim to do law enforcement's job in order to get help. Like, they're extorting victims in this country, and it's 70% of women that are in American prisons have some sort of domestic violence, human trafficking, or sexual assault in their background. Like, we are the women that slip through the cracks. Not to mention, America makes 25% of the global incarceration population. Like, we have more people in prison than entire continents.
That's interesting, though. That's interesting, and I'd like to find out from you, right? How did you really get into the prison system? What really happened? Talk to us more about that.
Well, when I made a deal with my father, if that shelter wouldn't help me, I would sign temporary guardianship over to for my kids so they'd be safe. So my ex can show up and take them if I wasn't there with cops. And once I did that, I lost my health insurance, so I couldn't go to the doctor anymore. I was like trying to self-medicate on the streets because now they had just been cut off cold turkey. I had no place to live. I was terrified. I was still like running, from this man. And, the only people that helped me were, drug dealers. And that was the only aid I received. So obviously I took it just to survive. And now I was, I had to drop out of college. I was in college before this. Like, I didn't do drugs. I didn't do any of that. And, I just kept getting sucked further into a life I never wanted. And I became a drug dealer myself. And so eventually in 2011, I caught, drug trafficking charges. And then the feds picked it up 2 years later. Like, I literally went to jail for the same drugs twice. Like, I got held accountable for the same drug bust in the state and then in the feds. Like, and this is common in America where, there's no such thing as double jeopardy when it comes to drug dealers and, other crimes.
Interesting. You have gone into the prison system. How long did you spend in prison?
Well, I spent 7 months in the state of Maine jails. And then when the feds picked it up, I got 37 months. And I didn't do well on probation. I went back within 6 months. And because what happens is, like, the prison had me on like $1,400 worth of prescription med, or $1,100. I can't remember the exact number, but I had no way to pay for these prescription meds. They only give you a 30-day supply when you get out. So, these psych meds are very dangerous if you stop taking them. With lithium, I was on lithium. Your heart can stop. So I was like spiraling very quickly, and every time I left my house, I had a panic attack. So I'd end up smoking weed or, relapsing. And